Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our latest installment of our virtual Tech Talk series. Today's class is going to be on password managers. This is a class that I've been wanting to teach for quite a few years, so pretty excited to be able to bring this to our community for the first time, especially virtually. So welcome, my name is Casey. I am the Digital Services Coordinator for the Martin County Library System. That basically means that I get to learn new technology and equipment at all 6 of the library's locations. And then I get to go to those locations and teach those fun pieces of technology to other people. I'm also joined by my co-host, Ricky. Ricky, did you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Ricky Donnelly. I'm the Electronic Resources Coordinator for Martin County Library.
Awesome. Thanks, Ricky. And like I said, Ricky will be monitoring the chat. So any questions you may have, throw into the chat. And when we pause, he'll be able to share those with us. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, well, in today's password manager class, we're going to start first by defining password managers and talk about why they're so important to stay safe online. You're going to see a little demonstration on how they work. We've got some YouTube videos to share with you since this is a really good visual way of understanding how they work. And then we're going to spend kind of the second half of the class talking about a variety of different password manager options depending on your needs, your devices, your preferences. We're going to ask you a few questions to consider as you think about a password manager. All right, so these days we have dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of online accounts, which are all supposed to have, the random hard to crack password that we don't use on any other site. And it's really hard to come up with a new string of seemingly random letters and numbers and symbols for each online account, as recommended by the experts. Then we have to remember all of those things every time we need it to log in. Which is why, of course, we tend to use and reuse the same passwords over and over again. And while that makes our passwords a lot easier for us to remember, it also unfortunately makes us a bit more vulnerable to hackers. Okay. Sorry, technical difficulties. There we go. Okay, so just as a reminder of what those best practices are, or the current best practices, according to the NIST, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology, we have these guidelines here. Now, they released a report in 2017, and their latest revision was in 2020, and that's kind of where we're getting this information from. So that information, that report advises that length is better than complexity. So if you look at the example, even where it says length and then the greater than symbol complexity, like that password, if that was a password, that's more secure than complexity with the numbers and special characters, with the C and then the 0. So that's the guidance by the experts. Some people like to use a phrase or a mantra. They like to make it kind of positive since they have to type it in so much. And so I just Googled mantra on the internet and found a couple mantras, and this is the one that I thought would be fun to talk about. Just an example of having this as your password. Expect nothing, appreciate everything, exclamation mark. You still got your uppercase and lowercase and your special character, but you've also got all that length, and it's actually like not that hard to remember if it's something that's meaningful to you. So the NIST also recommends, of course, now that you've gotten your strong, long passwords, they also recommend using a different password for every single site you log into. This is where a lot of us struggle, but since there's always a risk of a website getting hacked and your password then being stolen, if you only use the password on that site, that's where your risk ends. But a lot of us tend to reuse the same password on several different sites. And if that's the case, then the hacker with your password will start plugging that password and username into other sites to try to get into other accounts, which of course makes you more vulnerable. And then finally, they've been saying this for a long time, but avoid using any personal information, which you can be tricked into revealing. And we talk about being tricked into revealing, like, oh, that'll never happen to me. That's called social engineering. It's actually quite common, and it happens in corporations. That's where I don't want to get in the weeds or anything, but when ransomware attacks happen, it's usually because someone got tricked into clicking on something or responding to something. So I just have this kind of funny video. It's pretty old at this point. It's from 2015. But just to give you an idea about how easy it is for someone to just chit chat with you and, collect information on you, personal information. So I'm going to press play. Ricky, let me know if the volume isn't working.
We've been hearing a lot about cybersecurity lately, largely because of what happened to Sony. Companies and individuals are more concerned about the safety and privacy of their information than ever. President Obama has unveiled a number of new proposals this week to crack down on hackers, and he plans to address this in the State of the Union speech on Tuesday. And it's great that the government is working on this, but the truth of the matter is we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves. The most popular password in the United States is password 123. And as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on the Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password. And this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. Has you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6, 12, 95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4. Gemma, 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name.
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is they learned a terrible lesson. Hi, I'm Jimmy Kimmel. Did you?
Okay. So hopefully you can kind of understand how social engineering works. That, if we use passwords of personal significance, we use them because they're easy to remember, but then we use those easy to remember passwords on all of these different sites. But you can see it's just easy for people to trick us out of information. And oftentimes it's not someone who looks like they're trying to be mean, but it looks like it's someone who could be nice and friendly and just making conversation. So what's the end result? I mean, I think you get it by now, but the end result is that we're basically set up for failure. We use those passwords that have personal significance because they're easy to remember, those cats and birthdays and graduation dates, anniversaries. Then we use that easy to remember password on all the sites we visit, or if not all of them, at least, the ones we visit every day. So that all adds up to leaving us quite vulnerable if and or when we're hacked. But don't worry, that's where password managers come in. They can help us achieve that better balance of security and convenience. All right, so let's get into the heart of it then. What is a password manager? We're going to go through this in a bit of detail, obviously, but in general, a password manager is a piece of software that can remember, create, and update all of your personal passwords, while you only need to remember the one password for the manager. I like to think of that as kind of like a master key that transcends all the individual keys that for doors that need to be locked or unlocked. And password managers can be either a program installed on your computer or an app on your mobile device. There's a few different versions, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Now, I'm going to show you another video. This one's about 3 minutes long, but it's a really good explanation of how exactly password managers work. It's also a little bit old. This one's, I think, is from 2017, so you'll see some slightly dated references. But the same concepts apply regarding password managers even today. Now, before I play it, though, I do just want to do like a tiny disclaimer. There is right at the 3-minute mark, so the very final 5 or 10 seconds of the video, there's like a censored curse word that appears on the screen. And I just apologize. I'm going to try to stop it right before. But just so you know, kind of that comes up right at the end. But the video is a great explanation. So Ricky, again, let me know if the volume needs to be adjusted.
Okay.
Person has 27 unique web logins. To create an account on a site, you have to register with a username and password, and most people pick passwords that are easy to remember. Actually, a lot of us end up using the same password for all of our websites, which is understandable, but risky. There are many different ways that hackers can get your password. They can use programs that try to guess it by randomly cycling through different combinations, hacking the website itself, or phishing by sending fake emails that look like they're from a website or company, but actually aren't. All of this spells bad news for people that reuse the same password because you're putting yourself at much higher risk for hackers being able to get into your emails, your photos, and even your bank info. Last year, Yahoo made headlines when it was the victim of a massive cyber attack, with sensitive information being stolen from 1 billion accounts. So if you had a Yahoo account and you used that same password for other sites, you are now vulnerable to all those other accounts being hacked too. Every time there's a big hack like this, experts tell us to stop using the same password for every website. In fact, they say we should stop memorizing our passwords altogether, recommending that we use something called the password manager instead. I know, it already sounds complicated, but trust me, it's really not, and it'll help make all of your accounts much more secure. We currently think of passwords as things that we memorize and store inside our heads. But since we're really bad at remembering random things, there's a limit to how complex your password can be, and how many different ones you'll be able to remember. As a result, most people have really simple passwords, and many use the same one across all their logins. This sucks because if a hacker gets access to your one password, they then have access to all of your different accounts. And if your password is uncomplicated, it's astonishingly easy for hackers to guess it. For instance, if you use a password like, well, password, which is actually the 8th most commonly used one, it would take a hacker mere milliseconds to guess it. But if you use a password manager to generate a 15-digit series of random upper and lowercase letters and numbers, that time jumps up to 609 million years. The biggest thing we need to do is stop keeping our passwords in our heads. Instead, we need to put them somewhere else and lock them up, like a virtual safe. This is what the password manager does. It's basically an app that keeps all of your passwords secure inside of a safe that only you can unlock. This way you only need to remember one password. And once you unlock the safe, you can see all of your many different passwords in one place. Since it's an app, you can access your passwords from any device you've installed it on. And since you don't need to remember all your passwords anymore, you can make them really long and complicated. So what happens if your password manager gets hacked? They would have access to all of your individual passwords then, right? Not necessarily. The password manager encrypts your data, so if a hacker looks inside your safe, all they'll see is scrambled passwords. LastPass was hacked in 2015, and users had to change their master passwords, but the individual passwords inside were safe because of this encryption. It may seem like it would be annoying to have to retrieve your password for every single website, but actually, most password managers have browser plugins that automatically fill your info in for you. So in many cases, it's actually easier. And besides, it's better than the alternative, becoming one of the millions of Americans that get hacked every year.
All right, I missed my pause. I got too invested in the story. But hopefully that gives you a good idea of how password managers work. And yeah, we're basically for the rest of the class going to break that down a little bit more and then talk about specific password managers that are out on the market, kind of the most popular one. ones. Just as a heads up, we are going to break for questions in a couple minutes. So if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat and we'll get to them shortly. So just to recap that, how does a password manager work? They generate strong, unique passwords, securely save all your passwords in that online vault. And then kind of when he was talking about the browser plugins, it will autofill your passwords when you need them right there, kind of right from the device that you're on. All right, so I want to talk about the benefits of a password manager because they're super beneficial, but I've sometimes heard password managers referred to as the vegetables of the internet. And that's because we know they're good for us, but we're perfectly happy to survive on a diet of the password equivalent of junk food. So let me go ahead and break down more specifically why they're so good for us. Reason number one, convenience. So this is huge since we usually default to whatever's the easiest. Password managers encrypt and store your passwords in that online vault. Then that random password is encrypted and saved in the vault. Saved in the vault. Because your passwords are encrypted, even if the vault is breached and your passwords or information stolen, it then needs to be decrypted before anyone can use it. So it's just a super convenient way to make yourself more secure online, and everything's in one secure location. All right, another benefit is that password managers can generate stronger passwords for you. Like the video showed, you can make it as long as you need to because you don't have to remember it. Password managers will often follow the most recent guidelines too from those experts. So you can have a 20 to 30 character long password and it's not a big deal. And then finally, the big one is unique passwords. So like I've said a couple times now that you don't have to remember every username and password combo, you can have a different password for every single login. And the end result of that is that you have a super convenient method of logging in while also not compromising your online safety. And I know we've all read the headlines, or maybe you've experienced it yourself, but there are people out there who will use a variety of methods to steal your personal information, data, and even money. So the less vulnerable you are, the better. In fact, I was chatting with Ricky about this yesterday. We're kind of going through this as a review, and he mentioned that he doesn't even know most of his passwords at this point because his password manager generates and stores them for him. But that actually works in his favor because no one can then trick him out of his password since he doesn't know it. So another benefit of password managers. Okay, now there's usually a couple questions that come up with a password manager, and the video again addressed some of them, but I just want to take a couple minutes here. So what happens if someone hacks my password manager? So when that occurs, like in the video, it talked about LastPass, a common password manager getting hacked in 2015. The data, the passwords you keep in that vault should be encrypted. That's up to the password manager to encrypt them. And password managers usually don't know your master password. So, it's kind of like if somebody were to rob a bank, they would steal the safe from the bank. If they were to steal a safe, they still wouldn't know the password or the combo to get into the safe. And that's kind of how it would work if your password manager was hacked. Now, what happens if I lose my master password? So as you can imagine, it's pretty difficult to recover your master password, that master key that gets you into your vault. And this might be a good thing for you or a bad thing, but just something to be aware of. So you might want to write it down. Some people say it's okay to write the master password down because it can be quite complicated to get into your account if you don't have that. And it's for your own good. They're trying to protect you from people who are pretending to be you. And then another question we sometimes get is, can I share my passwords with my family and friends? There are times when you share an account with others you trust. So I know my family, we share Netflix and Amazon Prime and You might have a shared bank account or monitor a child's social media. So some password managers allow you to share specific passwords with others too. Or you might want to have like a family subscription, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So if that's something that's important to you, definitely keep that in mind when looking at specific managers. All right, we're going to pause here for questions. Are there any questions in the chat, Ricky?
None in the chat yet.
Okay. I know that was kind of a long introduction to password managers, but feel free to type any questions into the chat. Otherwise, we'll probably just keep going till the end then, but we're going to kind of focus more on password managers going forward. Great. Okay, well, again, throw your questions into the chat and then the next pause, Ricky will let me know what questions we have. So hopefully by now you can see the value in having a password manager. And I do want to start out by saying that any password manager is better than no password manager. But there are a lot of options out on the market. And as you can imagine, we all have different needs. So kind of what we just touched on, you might have a family member or a shared account. So I did want to just have you ask yourself a few questions and share with you these questions that will help you choose the right password manager for you and your situation. And that's, I might as well just repeat that I am going to send out this information in an email next week. So I don't know if you're taking notes, but you'll get all these questions, everything in this slide deck will be emailed to everyone next week. So things to ask yourself when choosing a password manager, think about what device you'll need your passwords on. What operating systems do you use? What browsers do you use? How many devices do you need to log in with? Do you ever use a public computer like at the library where you'll need access to those passwords? Okay, so think about what devices you'll use it on. Next question is, what kind of recovery options will I need? Are you prone to forgetting your password? Do you need a slightly easier recovery option, or is security more important to you? Like, do you want less recovery options because you want more security? And what type of security does it offer? We talked about this already, but most password managers encrypt your passwords while storing them on their servers. That's pretty standard these days with password managers, but definitely something to confirm as it's pretty important. How many passwords do you have? Another question to consider. So some free password managers give a limit, usually around 50 passwords. Do you have more than 50? Will you have more in the future? Probably. You should try to stick with the password managers that allow for unlimited passwords, because chances are you probably already have more than you think, and you're probably only going to get more and more usernames and passwords as time goes on. How beginner friendly is this software? So are you someone who doesn't mind figuring stuff out? Do you like kind of working through some troubleshooting yourself? Or would you prefer a more user-friendly interface? Are you willing to pay for the difference between the two? Do you want a lot of settings options? Or would you kind of prefer to have everything set up for you from the get-go and then just tweak as you find need to? Does it support biometric security features? Okay, and in case you don't know this term, biometrics are a method of using your body basically as your password. So if you've used your fingerprint or your face to unlock your phone or computer before, your device has those biometric capabilities. And of course, if your hardware has those features built into it, you probably want your password manager to be compatible with it to save the time and hassle of typing in that long, strong password every time. And then think about what features you're willing to pay for. So we'll talk a little bit more, but some are free and some have, premium upgrades. So maybe if, one of your accounts gets there's a data breach on a website that you have an account with, do you want an alert? A lot of them offer what's called health hygiene reports. So they're constantly monitoring, that's usually an upcharge. Most password managers offer some combination of all of the above. So it's more a matter about deciding what's important to you. And also what are your deal breakers? What are you not willing to give up for a password manager? Okay, so today we're going to talk about two main types of password managers. We'll briefly review browser-based password managers like Apple's iCloud Keychain or Google Password Manager. Then we'll spend a bit more time talking about online third-party password managers like the ones we have listed here. Basically go through the general pros and cons of each type and then dive into more specifics on the third-party ones like 1Password, LastPass, Bitwarden, and Dashlane. So that's going to pretty much carry us through to the end of today's class. But browser-based managers, okay. So when you access the internet, you're probably using one of the major browsers like Chrome, Edge, Firefox. If you have Apple, you're probably using Safari. If you've ever used a Windows machine since like 1995, you've probably used Internet Explorer in the past, which is now Microsoft Edge. But when you access the internet to check your email, your bank account, or your Amazon, some browsers might, and you've probably seen this before, some browsers might invite you, would you like to save your password? So that it's convenient for you next time you log in. And that is what we're considering a browser-based password manager. So those passwords are stored directly in your browser. And they've come a long way in the past few years, and security experts now say that if you're not going to get a third-party password manager, that these are the next best thing. It's not the best solution, but it's way, way, way better than nothing, than remembering your passwords or trying to remember them and using the same one on all your sites. Browser-based passwords offer enough convenience to hopefully entice you to have at least that unique password, since you don't have to remember it. It's always on your browser. It's also really good for people that operate basically entirely in one ecosystem. So for example, if you have all Apple products, then you're going to have Safari on all of your devices, on your phone, on your Mac. The Apple browser is Safari, and you might as well use the Apple Safari password manager. Some strengths. So we'll basically go through strengths and weaknesses, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit more specifics. I have one final video to show you on the next slide. So strengths, convenience. Again, it all comes back to convenience at the end of the day, and it doesn't get much better than free and easy. It's built right in your browser, so chances are that your passwords are going to be right where you need them when you need them. Plus, a lot of browsers will prompt you, like I mentioned before, to save your password. So you don't even have to take any extra steps or learn anything new. I usually just click yes when my browser asks me, do you want to save your password? Sure, why not? And then finally, they're very secure. Some experts say they're even more secure than the third-party password managers, but we'll talk about why that is in a little bit. Weaknesses. So there are some drawbacks to a browser-based manager. The main one being that the browser-based manager only works within the browser. So many people use apps on their mobile devices, so not being able to access their passwords could be an issue. And I'll just use myself, for example. When I'm home, I log on to my bank's website to review my account from my home computer. However, when I'm out and about, I need to access my bank through my banking app on my mobile phone. If I have all my passwords saved in my Google Chrome browser on my computer, I can't access those passwords from my banking app, at least not easily. There is a way, kind of a workaround, a few extra steps, but it's not a very easy process. Another downside is that most browser-based password managers mostly save just passwords, which means you might still need to fill out some other fields like addresses, PIN numbers, credit card information. All of that might still have to be done manually. There's a lot of variety in all this, as you can imagine. So everything isn't true. There's a lot of gray area in here. These are just general guidelines. And then finally, there's one unique security concern, and that's that everything is saved to your browser on your device. But if you lose your phone or someone can access your computer, they access your browser, they have access to everything. Something like Google Chrome Password Manager doesn't require a master password to unlock that online vault. You know, your computer or your phone might have a passcode or a PIN that is required to log on to it, but then once someone's in the device, if everything's saved in the browser, then they would have access to everything. So just things to think about. But again, super great, easy option. And you might already be using it. I just didn't know that that was a password manager. Just a couple examples that you've probably seen if you use any of these. So Apple's iCloud Keychain, Google Password Manager, which we're going to look at in just a minute. And then Firefox, if you're a Firefox user, there's this called Blockwise. So like I said, I just have this little 1-minute video just to demonstrate how a browser-based password works. And Google has a great one for Chrome.
Every Google account comes with a password manager built in to save your passwords and keep them secure. Using the password manager is simple. When you're using Chrome on your mobile device or desktop, whenever you enter a password, Google will ask you if you'd like to save it. Once you click save, that password will be safely stored. To ensure your saved passwords will be available on all your devices, make sure you're signed into Chrome with your Google account and that sync is enabled. To see your saved passwords, you can access the password manager in 2 ways. One is through your Google account settings page. The other is by visiting passwords.google.com in any browser window, then signing in with your Google account. All the passwords you see here are securely saved, visible only to you, yet available for autofill across Chrome and Android devices. From here, you can view, edit, or delete a password after verifying your Google account login. Access your password manager from any device on any browser to help retrieve your passwords and make them safer.
All right. Great. So you'll see that they even said at the end that
passwords are a fact of online.
Sorry, the video loves to play. They even said at the end about it's Google, so Google makes Android. So if you're an Android user and you use Chrome at home, like on a laptop or desktop computer, then that actually might work for you because Google makes Android and Chrome. So again, it's just not necessarily compatible with everything, but it does work for certain people really well. Okay, but now we're actually going to switch gears and talk about third-party web-based or online managers. So these password managers are standalones, meaning they're not built into anything like your browser or your operating system, like we kind of just talked about, but rather it's a separate application or program that saves your passwords in an online vault, more like the video that we watched a little bit, the password manager video. So we're going to get into some of the specifics next, but some password managers have a free version with basic functionality, and then they charge for the additional features or the upgrades. So for example, you might want to use the free version of a password manager that allows you to store your 50 passwords. But if you want to store more than 50 passwords, you'll need the premium. And then any that don't have a free version, a free and a premium version, they'll usually offer a free trial. Or something similar instead. Okay, so third-party password managers are best if you work across a variety of devices, browsers, operating systems. I used myself as an example earlier, but I have a Windows 10 laptop at home. Chrome is my main browser, but I also have an iPhone where I tend to use Safari as my browser. So I'm a good candidate for the third-party password manager. Because I work across over all those different browsers, devices, and operating systems. They're also a good option for anyone that doesn't mind paying a small fee each month. And just for your reference, we're talking like $3 to $5 a month when we talk about a minimum monthly fee. So Some strengths of a third-party password manager is that it works like what we just talked about, works across multiple devices, browsers, and operating systems. It also has the capability of saving more than your passwords and will autofill, auto-submit forms, payment information, credit card information, library card number, since I know you use that every day. So just something to consider if you need a lot more of that autofill feature. One big difference too is the ability with the third party to really dial in those security settings. So you may want different settings for different accounts. So yeah, you might share your Netflix with your family, but you don't want to share your bank account with your family. So those additional features may be offered too through these third parties. So you know, the health hygiene reports, those are the types of bells and whistles that are offered. Some go as far as securing document transfers too. So if security is a high priority for you, then these third-party password managers have a lot to offer. Of course, when we talk about what's recommended by security experts, they all say this is the way to go, almost unanimously. Again, any password manager is better than no password manager, but this is what the experts recommend. As far as weaknesses or downsides to consider, there has been evidence that some of those fancy like autofill and auto submit features we just mentioned can actually be used against you. So some websites have been created, you know, with malicious intent to try to trick your password manager into filling out and automatically submitting some personal information. These are things that can be adjusted via those granular security settings that we just talked about. Just something to be aware of so you can make the appropriate tweaks. And then finally, as you can imagine, master passwords can be difficult to recover, but that's really just to protect you from anyone trying to pretend to be you. You know, some password managers, I think I mentioned this earlier actually, but some password managers intentionally don't store your master password anymore. If this is something that concerns you, if you're worried about forgetting it, look into recovery options, because at the end of the day, if you can't recover that master password, you'll need to reset your account, which basically means it'll clear all your current passwords and you have to fill it out again. But a lot of them have some kind of guardrails, I guess is a good way to put it, built in, like they have a piece of paper that you print out and write down your information, and that's stored in like a safety deposit box, or there's a QR code on the one I have that I can just use my phone to scan that QR code and get into. All right, and so for the rest of the session today, we're just going to review the 4 most popular password managers and touch on the highlights. So we're starting with this one, 1Password, because it was rated as the best third-party password managers by the main sources I used for this presentation. And just FYI, those sources were Consumer Reports, the New York Times Wirecutter, and Wired Magazine. And in case you're interested in reading those reports, I have at the last, I think it's the last slide, I have links to all of those reports. There's a lot more detail in there. So if you really want to get granular yourself, there's a lot of great information in those reports. But 1Password was voted best. They don't have a free version, but they do offer a free 14-day trial. After that, it's $3 a month. And like a lot of these, you're going to hear the same thing. They work across Mac OS, iOS, which is iPhones, Android, Windows, and Chrome OS, if anybody has a Chromebook. So pretty much any device that you might have. 1Password also works with biometrics. So if you have a fingerprint or face scanner built into your phone, you can use that too. What people really love about 1Password, the real standout reason is that it's great for beginners. But as you get started, they walk you through some onboarding tutorials, some interactive tutorials, and the interface is really clean and easy to use. I am going to just mention that like anything new, there's going to be a learning curve, but that's where people have really appreciated that 1Password has like the FAQs and some really helpful documentation to help their users. Another feature that 1Password offers is sending you an alert when you have a weak password. They'll even offer to change it for you because they'll probably come up with a better, stronger one than you or I can. They'll also send you alerts if your password has been compromised. So they use this free website. If you've never visited it before, check it out, haveibeenpwned.com. It's a great resource if you want to see any accounts with your email, if your email is associated with any data breaches. So I'll give an example, the T-Mobile data breach that happened earlier this year, a couple months ago, I think. I heard about it in the news and just chatting with coworkers, but it was probably 3 or 4 weeks before I heard anything from T-Mobile about the data breach. So what password managers, and 1Password in particular, what they do is they monitor these data breaches and then they alert you so that you can quickly go in and change your password as soon as possible. So that's where password managers are a bit more proactive in monitoring that sort of thing. The major downside I've heard about 1Password was mainly that it asks you for your password a lot. It's more just an annoyance. The default setting to log you out is after 10 minutes, but you can go in and tweak that in your settings. So just something to keep in mind. All right, Bitwarden. Okay, so Bitwarden was the best free option in all those reviews that I read. They all kind of unanimously said Bitwarden was the best free and 1Password was the best overall. So Bitwarden does have a premium option as well, depending on your household needs. And that premium is going to give you access to the same things we've kind of covered, that password hygiene report. In this case, it gives you access to 1 gigabyte of encrypted file storage. Of course, like all of the rest of these, it's going to work across the usual devices, browsers, operating systems. Bitwarden, as far as I could tell, it does support some biometrics, but the only specific ones it had listed were Windows Hello, which is on Windows 10, and then Touch ID on Apple, which is the fingerprint scan. As far as I could tell, it doesn't actually have the face scan, even on an iPhone. Even though it has the touch, it doesn't have the face ID. So I haven't gotten a chance to try it. I haven't tried Bitwarden personally, but just FYI. The main complaint about Bitwarden is that it lacks the documentation and the easy to follow instructions that 1Password has. So if you've never used a password manager, there's not a lot of support during that learning curve. But it's free, so I'm kind of in the you get what you pay for camp with Bitwarden. I do know people that use it and love it. Okay, LastPass. So LastPass does have a free version, but also offers premium and family subscriptions. And I should pause here to mention that family subscriptions are great because you can have 3 or 4 users. Each one's going to be a little bit different, but 3 or 4 users on the same account. And in this case, for $1 more. So 1 person for $3 or 3 or 4 people for $4. That means everyone in your family or household can have different accounts, different master passwords. But the paid subscription is quite a bit of savings, even with 2 people. So LastPass is just like the others, and then it works across those major browsers, operating systems, devices. The free version, the difference between the free and the premium, the main difference is that the free version you can choose either to use the free version on your mobile devices or the free version on your desktop computers or laptops, rather than across all of them. If you want to cross all of those, you're going to have to pay for the premium. This is a super recent change, March 2021. We all kind of laugh about this, those of us that have been following password managers for a while, because LastPass was the darling of the tech world. Everybody loved LastPass. Everybody, raved about it and told everybody you have to get LastPass. But then they started charging for the ability to work across mobile and desktop computers. So they changed their pricing structure. They were actually acquired. So on the slide, you'll see they were acquired by a private equity firm. So of course that private equity, that change in ownership and change in mission, maybe change in priorities internally, meant that they started charging for some extra features that they previously gave it away for free. And they really upset a lot of people in the tech world. And now the tech world is basically protesting them and saying that, well, now you're nothing special since you don't really give us anything that we can't get anywhere else. So there are some of the reviews I read, written by the journalists, they are concerned about the long-term viability, because now that there is nothing special, they might not have the capital, I guess, the finances to keep going, but also just kind of the changes being made by the private equity firm. So time will tell. The tech world is a little bitter about all those limitations, but in my opinion, it's still a decent product, especially the paid one. It's the same cost as all the other paid ones, pretty much, if not cheaper. And actually just today, I read a head-to-head comparison between the paid versions of LastPass and the paid version of 1Password. And they said at the end of the day, after going through all the different minutia, that it was too close to call one better than the other. But a year ago, that would not have been the case. A year ago, you would have heard LastPass, everything. So yeah, so just a little bit of background on that, why we all kind of laugh. I think I skipped over it, but LastPass also offers the biometric support across quite a few devices and operating systems. They do the fingerprint and the facial recognition too. Okay, and last but not least is Dashlane. So in all the research that I reviewed, those reports that I mentioned, Dashlane was considered the best full-featured manager. And that's because it offers more bells and whistles. And as you can see, the price reflects that. They have that free version for 50 passwords, but after that, premium is going to be $6.49 a month. Dashlane is kind of known for their easy to navigate desktop client. So similar to 1Password, it's pretty easy to use. And their mobile app works well too. Dashlane also has, so this is kind of the full feature. I'm going to talk about a couple of these additional features. They have what's called a local or offline password manager. And we haven't really talked about this, but it's another type of password manager, and it's offline. Today we talked, as you know, about browser-based and third-party password managers, but some people are hesitant to store all those passwords in that online vault. Because at the end of the day, an online vault is still online, which means it's still a target for hackers around the world. Local password managers are instead stored on your computer or on a specific device offline. So the only place to access those passwords is you have to have that device in your hand or that peripheral. Could be a computer, it could be a USB, could be another type of dongle that you would plug into your device to access those passwords. So that's an option if that's important to you to be offline, just so you know. And then another unique feature that Dashlane offers is a VPN or a virtual private network. And these come with both of these options are with their premium. VPNs aren't really about passwords, so we didn't cover those today, but it's security related. So if you're not familiar with VPNs, they're basically a way to access a Wi-Fi network in a safe way if you need to do sensitive or confidential type work or business. And this is using a public Wi-Fi signal. So for example, at the library, we have a public Wi-Fi connection, which is great for surfing the web. But if I wanted to do something like check my bank account while in the building, I would want to use a VPN. And what that VPN does is just make sure that if anyone's watching the Wi-Fi traffic, that my information would kind of be hidden or cloaked. Same thing goes if you're at a Starbucks or McDonald's, or Ricky was reminding me like business travel, this VPNs really got big when, and that was my first time using a VPN was as a business travel and sitting in an airport, needing to do work. I worked for a public accounting firm and it was very sensitive information. And so we had to use a VPN anytime we were working not on our network. I think of VPNs like a tunnel, kind of like if you're driving a car, you can see it and you can see it's traveling. But then it goes in the tunnel and it's still moving. It's still that traffic going both ways, but you can't see it anymore. And that's VPNs in a nutshell. But if you want to hear more about VPNs, let me know and I can include that in our follow-up email. And of course, the downside to all of these bonus features is going to be the price. As you can see, Dashlane is double the cost of most of the others. So again, you kind of get what you pay for. Okay, we are wrapping up. So just another reminder we're going to pause for questions after this slide. So go ahead and drop them into the chat. But for now, we'll just go ahead and keep going. So password managers. So I hope you understand why password managers are meant to be easy and help you balance that security and convenience. Just to protect yourself from any attacks, but you still should be having good safety practices online. So I just want to mention a couple things that, I didn't really think about till I started digging into this a bit, but password managers do not protect your password if a website gets hacked. So I mentioned that T-Mobile hack earlier. That had nothing to do with the strength of my password or the fact that I was or wasn't using a password manager. It was T-Mobile itself that was hacked, its servers, and that's where the breach occurred. However, where a password manager can help you in those instances is by alerting you when those breaches happen so that you can change your password ASAP. So one security issue that we've already kind of covered, but just to include it in this section, is that sometimes our beloved third-party password managers get tricked into that auto-filling and auto-submitting of personal information to malicious sites. So just now that you know this, you can disable the auto-submit feature on your password manager. And some password managers like 1Password make this feature something you set up yourself by opting in, rather than just having it as the default that then you need to turn off. So just something to be aware of. Again, I didn't know this until I really started reading these reports. And then finally, password managers aren't perfect. Instead of wondering if you'll get hacked, start planning for when. Been hearing all these newspaper articles about how just we continue to invest in cybersecurity as a society, the government, companies, that like from a job market growth perspective, it's going to explode, as if it hasn't already. But anyway, all that means is you're going to want to make sure your password manager first encrypts your password before storing them on their servers. Like we mentioned earlier, that's pretty standard these days, but just still something that's worth confirming as you set up your password manager. And those reports cover all that type of information too. All right, questions, Ricky.
We do have one question asking if Dashlane is the only one that offers an offline mode when you're looking for your passwords.
Good question. Okay, so there are some offline password managers that just are standalone. So Dashlane happens to be a third-party online manager that has this additional feature for the upgrade for offline. However, there are lots of other offline password manager options available to you. I don't know in terms of like that hybrid model. I can look into it to see if there are others that have the third-party online, but also the local offline option.
I do know LastPass will actually like temporarily allow access offline. It's more of a, like if you clear the apps on the app specifically. So, but it's more of a temporary save. So say you were to clear your app's data or do something like that, it would no longer be available until you went back online.
Oh, like if you thought you were getting hacked, you could like shut it down. Or if you lost something.
Well, it's more of a, if you logged in once and then you're not online and then you're not online for a while, you could still access it.
Oh, gotcha.
But then if you clear it, yeah, it stores it locally. But then say you went in and cleared it or uninstalled it, it wouldn't still be there. You'd have to go back and
Okay. Yeah, let me go ahead and look and see if I can find any other. Oh, there's dozens more password managers out there. This New York Times article is very thorough. So that'll be the first place I look. Any other questions?
that
All
was
right,
all.
well, okay, thanks. Just to wrap up for today, to review what we talked about, we tend to sacrifice security for convenience when it comes to passwords and other things in life too, actually, now that I think about it, but I'm just as guilty as the next person. Password managers, though, are the modern solution to remembering complex, random, and numerous passwords. Eat your vegetables, they're good for you. Password managers work like a vault that stores all of your passwords, and you only need your master key or that master password to access that vault. And then, of course, we talked about the different types of password managers with different features, services, costs. Everybody's going to be in a different situation with different needs. So again, you're not going to make a wrong choice. But if you can have a preference, like if you want a preference to make sure all your needs are covered, then there's a lot of options out there for you. All right, so thank you for joining us. I'm going to send you our this link. I'm also going to send you our survey to take, and then I did just want to point out these are the links for the references that I use for today's research. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you at future virtual Tech Talks. We've got some exciting stuff coming up in 2022. So thanks so much.